Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Billy Lackey. I'm Vice President of Programs.
My name is Haley Olson. I'm the Manager of Membership and Board Liaison.
We're so excited that you're able to join us for our first professional development webinar. We look forward to hearing your comments regarding the webinar and any suggestions or feedback you have for us. We will follow up and let you know when we post the video and the transcript of the webinar to the ACF website for your reference. To get us started, we have a few guidelines for our gathering this evening. The presentation will last about 60 minutes, and we will have 30 minutes for questions. Please, we ask you that we keep your microphones muted during the presentation portion, and please hold all questions till the end. During the time frame for questions, please type your first name in the chat section, and we will call on each person if you wish to ask the question yourself. If you would like for us to ask the question, you could go ahead and type your question in the chat section that's listed below. And let's see, if you have any questions after this, or we don't get to your questions during this time period or the time frame for questions, you can email Haley or I. My email address is wlackey@composersforum.org, and Haley's is holson@composersforum.org. We will plan to get back to your email within a week, but due to the holidays, it might take a little bit longer depending on your question for us. We're asking that you email Haley and I directly, as we'll be fielding questions for Trudy, and we're going to set up a specific time to work with her again to answer any of the questions that you might have. Let's see, just a few more things about this evening. As a reminder, by participating in this webinar, you agree and acknowledge that this session is being recorded both in video and audio format, and ACF will make such recordings made public in the future and also available for download and other means. You acknowledge and agree that to the extent of your participation in this session by asking questions, sharing examples of your music, or otherwise appearing in the recording, you grant ACF a non-exclusive royalty-free license to use your name, voice, likeness, and any other intellectual property you share during the session as part of ACF's distribution of this recorded session. You acknowledge and agree that ACF and/or the session leader, as appropriate, own all rights to the materials distributed by ACF or the session leader, as appropriate, and that we own all rights to the materials distributed in connection with the session and the recordings of the session, and that you do not gain any rights in such materials or by participating in the session.
Thank you again, all of you, for joining us. And we're very grateful that Trudy Chan has partnered with us and is joining us this evening to provide her insights into artistic management. Trudy formed Black Tea Music, a boutique music promotion, publishing, and management representative for composers and new music inclined artists after gaining decades of experience in music publishing and many other music related activities. Trudy is joining us for an exchange of information based on her experiences. She is not here to promote Black Tea Music, nor will she be sharing financial information or answering questions regarding finances. We ask that you contact Billy and I via email with any questions you might have after this webinar. As a national service organization, we at ACF love assisting artists with questions regarding management and other topics. And once again, Trudy, thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. I just want to make sure that you can all hear me. Great. So without further ado, thank you so much for having me here, Billy and Haley. I'm really excited to chat with you all about what does it mean by composer management, and also share some insight about if you are in the market of looking for a manager, what should you be looking for, and what does a manager may be doing for you, and that kind of related information. So the first thing I just want to touch on really quickly is there is such a thing as professional composer management. I think there are fewer of us composer managers than your usual artist manager. That is the kind that you see in big artists managing roster, like composers managing performing artists, but there are a few of us, and I do have a few colleagues that work with composers. So I think we are a slowly growing bunch. Um, so where do you typically find these people? A lot of them come from a music publishing background, like myself. I used to work at a major music publisher, and then I branch out and do things on my own. And also, you can find independent artists, artist manager who are working mostly with composers, or they are based in a company, but they have an arm that works with composer, or they accept some composer onto the roster, something along the line. So before we keep talking more about what is mean by manager and assistant and what do we do, I just want to give everyone a little bit of a background of myself and what I do, so y'all know more about me. I have been working as a composer manager first with said major publisher, and then now at my own company. And I have been seeing a lot of composers, listening to a lot of new music, and then meeting a lot of people. And then we all agree that this service is quite needed because there are a lot of composers these days, and there's wonderful composers writing all sorts of different music, and they all need some outlets. And while it's good and fine to writing music at your home or at your studio, we would really want to help get more music out to different performance ensembles or independent performers or presenters, so that the audience can have better chance to listen to more music and get to know more of all the fine composers that we have in the country these days. Um, the reason I wanted to keep doing this is I know also that the music industry is pretty complicated, and there are a lot of layers, and there are a lot of things that one needs to navigate, and it's not necessarily always step one leads to step two leads to step three, and then boom, go. There are always a lot of different things that you may not encounter or you may not think you will encounter. So as a part of the music community, I want to be one of the people who can be helpful to make things happen. So hence I'm doing this. Just quickly about what Black Tea Music is, so that you have a context. We are a team of two. It's myself and my colleague Beth Hollup, and we have been working in the music industry for a combined experience of about 26 years. And we are both active performers besides doing the music administration. So we think that because we have both sides of aspect, which will help us understand more about what composers needs and also what the performing organizations needs, and then be able to bridge the gaps and navigate through as many hurdles and pitfalls and unexpected surprises as possible. What we usually do, so we offer a comprehensive list of service because of our joint music publishing background. Like me, Beth is also someone who has a music publishing background, and she also has a marketing background. So we kind of do things coming from some sort of a music publishing perspective. And as a composer management, the services that we do, some of our colleagues also do a certain type, and some of our other colleagues do a different type. So I would say that most of our services, most of what services you will see a typical composer manager may offer, and that would include promoting your catalog, helping you develop your projects, or helping you think about new projects, or find people to match with your existing projects. Composer management will also help with contract negotiations, particularly if there are places that you wanted to just be a composer and have someone navigate the trickier bits for you, and a composer manager is there to help you with doing those kind of things. Some composer managers, depending on their background, their training, may also offer some PR marketing support. I will talk just a little bit between the difference between promotion and publicity. That's a little bit different there, but we'll get there in a quick bit. And some other composer managements may offer music engraving services or other editorial services, depending on the training and the skills. And so myself, I know how to use Sibelius, so that's one of the things I sometimes do. And some other managers prefer just not to do that at all. It depends on what people want to do and how they want to offer their services. Some composer composer managements also, if particularly they are more like music publishing oriented, may offer services like helping you set up your rentals and your sales, or help you administer it, or be your agent. So that's one of the other things that composing management may offer. And then there's also general administration. This is very broad. It everything from sending your promotion materials to people help you answer a few questions regarding your schedule or the work. So it, particularly if a performance ensemble has questions about your work, and then the manager can front that question for you, or they would help with whatever administration support that you might need, that kind of thing. So that's kind of a broader topic, broader type of service. And again, also depending on the type of management, they may also offer some performance booking, particularly if you are a composer performer and you want to also go on stage and perform. And yeah, so this is a quick short list of the types of services that composer managers can offer. They can offer all of it, they can offer some of it. And also, so just quickly talking about the bits about promotion and publicity, so that we have a more clear sense of what those two types encompass. Promotion, particularly from my experience as a promotion manager from a publisher, we tend to promote the works to performance organizations. So we call it more like business to business. We see that the performance organization, or the artists, performing artists, or the presenters, or basically anyone who programs as a business entity. So from one end of the business to the other end of the business. So our promotions stay behind. And for publicity, it's more like getting your works, getting your concert to the public. That includes reaching out to the press, um, trying to get you reviews, or trying to get you features, trying to promote your concert so that you sell tickets and people come hear your music, or if you have a new recording coming out, trying to get some attention so that it can get some placements, that kind of thing. So some managers will offer both, but a lot of managers are more focused on one end other than the other, because of the training is a little different, and the method of promotion is also a little different. And particularly for promotion, music promotion is a much more long tail thing, which we will talk about this a little more a little further down. So there are very there are so in general, as a composer manager, our main work is to promote the composer's body of works. It can be the full catalog, it can be a selection of works. It depends on what the composer actually wanted to be promoted, because not everyone wants the entire catalog to be shown to the world, or composers may have a few works that they really wanted more performances. So that's one of the things that managers tend to do. And there are active promotions like talking to people directly, sending emails with your particular music, and try to get performances, or try to use your existing catalog as a stepping stone to get new commissions. And there's also more static promotions like promoting your music via a flyer or some sort of web page, or some e-blast that includes a few different pieces and that you are part of a group of pieces, that kind of thing. And then also managers will go to events like conferences, other concerts, and other things. Just try to be present so people know people know who you are, and know who people know who we are. And then through that, we tell people, oh yeah, these are the composers that we're working with, and they are having all these things happening, and you should go check this out, blah blah blah. So that's one other things that we usually do. And we network all the time because you always need to meet new people. And even with people that you have met for a while, you would always want to make sure you maintain the relationship. But we'll talk a little more about how we do our work, how we collectively do our work. So I wanted to talk a little now. If you are in the market of looking for a manager and you really think that it is time for you to have a manager, finances aside, the things that you might want to consider is, what are you actually looking for? Are you looking for a manager, or are you looking for an assistant to help you do your things? I mean, granted, the kind of duties that we do sometimes are blurry, particularly when we're talking about the administration side. There might be things that a manager will do and a personal assistant will also do. But there are certain things that personal assistant won't do, but manager will do. So you want to think about, if you are you, what kind of things are you looking for? Are you looking for someone who is going to help you with a lot of things so that you can focus on working on your projects? Or are you looking for someone to help you with a particular project, get the project off the ground, or negotiate a contract, or just seal up certain things, or get a project promoted because there's a premiere coming up, that kind of thing. So that's a different thing. Are you looking for someone who is going to provide you professional guidance to your career? Or are you looking for someone as a long-term representative who would be your spokesperson whenever someone contact you for a project, or whenever someone contact you to need music placement or something like that? So all of these are a little different. And or also, are you looking for a promotion manager, or are you looking for a publicity manager? So that's the slight difference that we just covered a little earlier. So the other thing to think about is, if you would want to find someone who is solely working for you versus someone who is working with a company who has a list of people that they are also working for. Because if you are lucky enough to hire someone who works completely for you, you can arrange as much of your projects being done as possible. But if you're working with someone who is also working with other people, so there might be priorities that you may not be aware of, things that happen, or so there's a lot of things to think about. If you are looking for someone who just wants to execute your orders, or if you are not open to taking advice, which is fine, or or if you feel uncomfortable giving the manager some reasonable leeways, especially during time-sensitive situations that the manager might need to make a decision immediately because a program might call, hey, I'm very interested in Composers X piece. We needed a material, so we needed to program it right now, and but we have a question about this, and we just need to do this. And if you don't think that the composer can make, the manager can make that decision for you, then or if everything needs your approval, then maybe you are not necessarily looking for a manager, and you might want to find a personal assistant who might serve your needs better. Um, I would say for my own experience, this is really helpful to be upfront about what you would want and what you're looking for, so that everybody knows about the expectation and won't be disappointed or frustrated once the relation started and then you realize that that person is not exactly what you're looking for, or this is not the type of work that you need help. In an ideal world, again, from my own experience, I would see that as a manager, composer manager particularly, we are there to represent a composer, to promote the works and projects, to be the official liaison for new and developing projects, to interface with organizations, networking on your behalf, to smooth out negotiations, particularly if there are any rough things that you think it's better to have a third party to negotiate so that you can preserve your relationship with whatever organization or person you're working with. To offer artistic and administrative advice. It's basically a more collaborative process from my point of view. And again, granted, the lines are sometimes blurry, but typically a manager's role is quite a bit weightier. So the next thing I wanted to touch on, I'm sure this is a very interesting thing that everyone is dying to know, is like how much time does things takes to get things out to the world or for people to notice you. So what we wanted to say is, like, we always wanted to manage the expectations just so that everybody starts on a realistic ground, and it will be a vastly happier experience when we set some ground rules so that everybody knows what to expect. Um, so the biggest thing I always encounter, and throughout my years of working with organizations, it's like things takes time. Things takes a lot of time, and a lot longer than one might think sometimes. Obviously, there are times that I have also encountered. I talked to a contact, talked about a composer, and the contact's like, "Oh, great! I really like this music. Let's do something now." Great, but that doesn't happen all the time. Most of the time is people see a name that you presented, they think about it, they look at what other names they already get, and they look more about it, and then they look at a lot of things that is not related to your music at all, but related to the day-to-day logistics and or whatever things that they are looking at. And it would just like take a lot of time for people to generally consider having a new composers work on their program. And I would say that the larger the organization, the higher up in the national chain, the longer the lead time for things to happen. Because usually these organizations program a few seasons in advance, and if you are working on an opera, that takes a lot longer. So be mindful that there's always a lack of time before you mention before a project being mentioned to fruition. Sometimes it takes a few years. It depends on the project. So that's that. And if there are questions you have regarding the process that you're working with a manager, it's always good to ask all the questions and make sure that the manager knows exactly what you're thinking and what you have in mind. We do try to read our artist's mind in a way, but we can only read so much and we don't have a crystal ball. So it would be helpful for people to tell us what you like to do. And likewise, when we are explaining things to artists, how things are done, and okay, this project with X ensemble is going to take this much of time to maybe get to the next step, because we know that based on our experience with industry practice, but we are aware that you may not know that this is happening. So we will also try to explain things clearly so that there are no misunderstanding and everyone knows what's going on. So another thing regarding if you are working with a manager and you wanted obviously the manager to help you with all your projects and all your things, and you're enthusiastic with it, yeah, I have a manager now, I can have this manager to help me do everything. Try to think about also the manager is busy trying to help you, and then they are also formatting a plan to work to maximize your opportunities with organizations. So sometimes think about the type of things that you wanted the manager to do. Is this a good use of time? Is this a good use of my manager's time? Or what is my goal ultimately if I want my manager to do this? Would it be better if I do this, but my manager do this other thing that will help me reach a certain other level than asking my manager to do this other thing that may take some time, but ultimately may not be the immediately necessary step for you to do. So think about what kind of thing that you are looking for again. Um, I have been I have been in the field for quite a few years, and then one of the things that I think it is important to be mindful about is we try to be helpful and we try to be the source of information and we try to make things happen, but I we don't have a wand. So even though we wanted things to happen quickly, or we wanted certain things to happen, or we see that certain composer would work great with this ensemble, but things won't necessarily happen magically. So just having a manager doesn't necessarily mean that your piece all of a sudden will get programmed, or all of a sudden you'll have a lot of projects because the manager is supposed to help you find projects. Yes, they can eventually happen, but that is a time again. It usually takes a little longer. And particularly if you want to reach out to a new ensemble that your manager may have a contact but you don't, and that will also take time for the ensemble to get to know you and spend some time listening to your music and look at your scores and determine whether your music is fits with their needs, their programming needs. And also another thing to be mindful is, great, you won an award, that's great news, everybody knows about it, but that sometimes that award doesn't necessarily immediately lead to a project, a commission, a something. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it takes time, and that important event may accelerate the rate of people noticing who you are. um, and your manager will certainly help to spread that news so that everybody knows about that, but it also still takes time for people to think about these kind of things and consider having a new composer um, on their programming list. and and then my experience tells me that even with constant regular pitching, things take time to materialize. As I mentioned a little earlier before, a national organization, a major ensembles, major orchestra presenters, they program a few seasons ahead. So typically they also receive a lot of solicitations, and from people they know, from people they don't know. So, and making a decision involves not only the music, but a lot of things that does not involve music. And a lot of time it does not involve anything about your music. It is more likely involving how they run the organization, what kind of budget they have, and what kind of plans they have. Let's say we pitched to an orchestra, and orchestra X said, oh yeah, we are looking for XYZ, and this is going to be for 3 seasons down the road because we are going to have this celebration and we're starting to plan this celebration, and this is the theme and this is the kind of things that we are looking for. Do you have something? Or I would like to explore more of these composers and or these criteria. Do you have something that works? So it usually takes a while for things to materialize, and we have been working with so many organizations. We know that patience is gold, so that's a lot of patience there. All right, I see that. I, I should talk a little faster so that we can get through more things. So, um, a quick rundown of how the work is usually done. So we, as composer managers, we study the catalogs really carefully, look at the scores, we listen to the music, so we know exactly what to pitch to who, and we try to avoid the scenarios where we're pitching a piece with too many musicians to an ensemble that does not have certain types of musicians, so they have to hire additional people. That means that that piece is not going to get programmed because it doesn't really work for them. And then we keep a very close eye to ensembles and artists, what is happening these days. We go to concerts all the time, and we also pay attention to, we visit a lot of ensembles websites and study how they program things and what kind of aesthetics the ensemble has, so that we can provide more accurate information to the ensemble, so that they know that we did our homework, and that we respect what they do, so it will make them more willing to look at the stuff. And then we do try to promote things regularly, because we all know that repetition breeds familiarity, and sometimes the name needs to be mentioned at least 7 or 8 times before it actually registers in programmer's mind. And it has nothing to do with whether a composer is good or bad. It has nothing to do with that. It's just like that's information you need to, the information needs to keep coming up, keep going through the mailbox, or keep being heard, so that it start to build up some sort of memory. And like a personal experience, like we keep sending emails, we're promoting artists and programmers, all of a sudden, oh right, yeah, I've seen that name before. Where did I see that? Oh right, is I've seen that name in that XYZ e-blast, and oh right, yeah, I would like to look at the music more. So one of the things we do is just try to make sure that programmers sees names and see the music constantly, but not at a pace that is too constant that may create some sort of fatigue or annoys them. It's like, oh my God, it's that XY manager again, and then I can't look at this email anymore. So we will try to avoid those situations too. Um, and the other thing is like, the other things how we do, we would go to conferences as we said, and we go to concerts to create a presence, because just the mere thing of people seeing your face, you go to things and people know that, oh right, yeah, that is the manager for XYZ composer, right? I think I should go talk to this person because I see this person at the last 3 concerts that I went to. Let's go have a chat. And so the networking is just like have to constantly show up to things, so to make things current and keep a presence. Um, a lot of our fellow managers are members of professional industry organizations, so that we make sure we go to all these national events, again, just to keep the network, meet the people, particularly meeting people who are not in the local area. I mean, what part of our daily work is to try to meet with local ensembles, or just to keep a connection with ensembles or artists or programmers who are not in our area. And I know that myself and a lot of my fellow managers, we always seek out people to meet. So it's just we find out what they're doing, but also try to tell them from time to time what is happening, what music we're working on, what kind of exciting projects that may work for them. So again, it's a constant thing. Okay. So a few quick tips on how to work with a manager. Before you commit to hiring a manager, it's really good to have a conversation or a few with your intended person. It's very important to get to know the person, particularly personal dynamics. It's just good to read what is on paper and website, but it is really good to actually get to know the person, because a managerial relationship it is very personal, and you want to make sure the dynamics is right. Because sometimes if you don't think you can work with this manager because you might be a more chatty person, and your intended manager may be a little bit quiet, it might it might not work as well in the long run. So you want to talk to this person and see how you may work well with them. For example, we usually like to have in-person meetings, or at least video conference, so that we can meet the person and just read the body language a little bit, and also try to see if this is a person that we would like to work with, and vice versa for the composer to have a chance to see us and see if they would like to work with us. Um, Once you have determined to work with a manager and seal up all your logistics, you should work out a plan with the manager. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and also similarly be open to your manager's suggestions. Sometimes managers can approach things at a different angle that you might not have previously think about, because sometimes you are very front and center in your music and your managers will step away. They may look at things a little differently, and you may be pleasantly surprised that there are certain different angles that you might not have thought about that they have suggested. And also, one very obvious thing is to make sure your material is up to date, including your website, your bios, your headshots, your calendar of events if you have one, your scores, and your recordings. Um, Managers like to have materials as current as possible because it helps us to connect with the organizations with readily available information. We appreciate that the promoters are very busy people, and we don't want them to keep scrolling 6 times in the website or go to a different area just to find the information, and then end up not being the correct information for them. Because if they want to make a programming decision, the shorter time that they need to go look for the information, the better chance that they will pay more attention to the pieces. Set up a realistic plan. It's okay to have goals, but you need to know also that the goals can be very fluid, because there are things that change, and circumstances or the type of things that people are looking for, these kind of things can change. So have some goals, but be open to work with the manager to make sure that things are fluid and flexible. And also be very clear what you like to be done, and also understand that sometimes things may take a completely different route. And I also think that communication is good, that you and your manager communicate at an interval that works for you. I mean, if both of you like constant contact, like let's just text my manager 100 times and your manager texts you back 100 times, great. But sometimes you might want to set up specific times to meet with your manager, like an old-fashioned meeting, just to go through things. But the most important thing is whatever is comfortable for you and your manager. And another thing that I wanted to point out is both sides respecting people's time, which is a very important thing to consider, and it is a key to keeping a good relationship. Also, is as a manager, we're very mindful about our composers' writing time, and creative time is precious and personal, and we don't want to disturb the artist. If we know the artist is like crunching a new piece or something important that is coming up, or they just need to finish up a grant or something, we try to keep our communication with the artists to a minimum, consolidate, just to make sure that we check in with the artists, but we're not checking too much so that we don't disturb the process. And as managers, we also appreciate very much if our artists can sometimes give us a little room so that we can have the space to complete projects. Sometimes if you think about, oh, I have this really great idea, let me email my manager, and then you email your manager 6 other times because the thoughts keep throwing, great. But if there's a way to consolidate everything into one email, it will help the manager to find all the information in one place and not have to go through 6 places. And it actually saves a lot of time, and also information won't get lost. And another thing is, think about, should I schedule this email to go out to my manager during a weekday rather than 3 p.m. on a Sunday? Personally, I have received emails on Sunday at 3 p.m. Sometimes I'm running errands at the market, and oh my God, I wish this email comes on a Monday, because then it won't risk losing in my mailbox, because weekend emails, there tend to be a lot of like other promotional emails that come in during the weekend and get buried. So think about what is the best time for your manager to see the email, so that he or she can help you effectively do the work. And then another quick thing is, think about, how do you really need something to be done urgently? There was a few times actually, I received correspondence at 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. because the composer is so enthusiastic about something that suddenly came up in mind and just like itching to tell me. And I happened to look at my phone and saw the email. Okay, I have to I need to mark this as unread, otherwise this is going to disappear in my mailbox. Try to again, just to think about, is this urgent? How to manage your time with the manager, how to help your manager manage their time with you, so to have a successful relationship. And one parting thought is, well, I can't do all of this myself. Yes, of course, this is your choice ultimately. If you decide, after talking to a potential manager, you decided that you wanted to do everything yourself, that's great. And this is really depends on what you need and what you want to do and how you want to manage your time. If you think you can do it, sure. But knowing that, if you have a manager, know that this is a pretty long tail industry and things take some time to develop. And if you are on board with a manager and want to work with a manager, it is investment of your time and finances. It's also an investment for the manager for similar things. So just think about that. And if you actually are going to work with a manager, it's good to lay down all the things, and then maybe drop some list, what kind of things you want, what kind of things you expect, and then talk to the person before you start a relationship, so that everyone is clear about what you want to do. So I think I'm pretty ready to take questions, and Billy and
Yeah.
Haley.
Thank you so much, Trudy, for sharing all your years of knowledge with us. So yeah, we're going to open it up for questions now. For those of you that joined a little bit later, just some general guidelines. If you have some questions and you would like to ask that using your microphone to speak that aloud, please type your name in the message section and Haley will call on you. Or if you don't want to read or say your question aloud, you could type it in the chat section, and we will read the comment anonymously. Once again, this is being recorded, so you'll have this to refer to and go back to. If for some reason that your question doesn't get answered during our time period, you can email Haley and I. My email address is wlackey@composersforum.org. Our Haley is holson@composersforum.org, and we'll get back with you. Our goal is within the week, but due to the holidays, it might take a little bit longer. So we'll go ahead and open it up to questions. We do have one that is started already. Haley, would you like to ask that one?
Sure. So our first question that came in was, at what point is it a good idea to get a manager? When is the right time?
Okay, this really depends on where you are, but I would think that a good judgment is that you have a few projects that happened and you wanted to see if you can write for a different type of ensemble or branch out from your local area, or you have 6 projects open and you find yourself you really needed help because you are not prioritizing what you need to do and you are lagging behind. So those are a couple of very obvious points that tells you you probably need someone to work with you. Or if you think that you already, let's say you have been working on you have been working with your local ensembles and you wanted to to see if you can branch out to neighboring states or ensembles of the next level that you may not necessarily be able to make those connections, but you know that this potential manager have these contacts and will be able to represent you on your behalf, then this is also a point that you might want to consider having a manager.
Great. Thank you, Trudy. And we've had some more questions coming in. So the next question is, can you tell us which composers you represented in the past? What projects did you manage?
I can talk about what kinds of projects that I manage. That well, I have managed from smallest project. A pianist has a new has a new idea, wants to write. A composer wants to write for pianos. It was a small, single artist project. We currently, I would say that we have some bigger projects that involve multimedia, orchestra, that kind of projects. We have also worked on projects with other aspects, like a collaboration between dance and an ensemble. Or we have had projects that we have these two organizations sign on to a new piece and it needed a third or fourth commissioner, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Great. The next question is, I make my living in the media world. How can I work at separating that from the concert hall world? So if somebody from one of those worlds Googles me, they aren't completely put off by the other work. For example, trying to get a string quartet piece performed, and they look at my site and they see New Orleans jazz from a cartoon.
It all depends on, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a classical face and a jazz face or media face. We have artists. I have known artists who navigate successfully in these two different worlds or the however different worlds that they're doing. I think the most important thing is how these works are presented and how these works are packaged. For example, if we have artists doing that, we would one of the things that I would have done is to encourage the artists to have different portals so that the kind of people, let's say a classical programmer, would visit the classical portal, so to speak, or if a jazz person was looking for jazz things, will go directly to the jazz portal, like some sort of guidelines, just to be clear about what the presentation is, so that programmers will know exactly what they're looking for, and to package things clearly, and also maybe try a different approach depending on the type of music. And we always like to encourage artists just to pick, and also be yourself. um if this is exactly if let's put it this way, if your focus currently is you wanted to write more classical based pieces, you want to write more string quartet, you can just focus on that for the time being and maybe not show the other things, or maybe have a separate website and just, yeah.
Great. And then our next question, do you need to be an LLC to work with a manager? Does it help or does it not matter?
It does not matter.
Great. Next question is, do you help get the music of your composers in front of orchestra artistic administrators, or do you find that the administrators seek you out for your composers' works?
I have both. We actively talk to a lot of artistic administrators, independent performers, artist managers who manage performing artists. We regularly talk to them. We send them pitches with the targeted pitches, or bigger pitches that involve different type of music. Like sometimes we will present, oh, manage orchestras, please look at this composer with these 6 pieces. And sometimes we're like, orchestras, please look at these new concert openers that we have here. And sometimes artistic administrators will come to us, hey, we are looking for a concert opener. We just need something to plug this hole. Do you have something? Or a quartet. It's like, yeah, we wanted to look at these composers, and does this composer has a work that works for us?
Great. Our next question is, I am the composer in residence for a Chicago orchestra. Please describe the process of how you would leverage a small catalog to gain new commissions outside of my existing composer in residence gig.
Haley, would you repeat the question again?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's actually a two-part question.
Yeah, it is. So it is, I am the composer in residence for a Chicago orchestra. Please describe the process of how you would leverage a small catalog to gain new commissions outside of the existing composer in residence gig.
I will look at the catalog in general. It doesn't matter if the catalog is small or large. We work with smaller catalogs, we work with medium-sized catalogs, we work with larger catalogs. I think the most important thing is to pick out the right pieces to pitch to the people. A lot of the times, artistic administrators are not necessarily just wanted to look at a composer with a large catalog, but they want to look at a composer with the right pieces, whatever that word right means, for their programming needs. So it is our job to figure out the correct piece to show to the artistic administrators, so to excite them. And in that way, we just focus on the music and learn what the other places that we want to pitch to, what kind of things that they need, so that we get the right things to the right people. And that will save everybody a lot of time. And then the managers will immediately be able to look at the piece and say, okay, this worked for us. Let me think about this further. Let me bring this piece to my music director, and let's see what it is. But there are times that no matter how careful, how diligent we do, is also about the music. Sometimes if the music director doesn't really connect with the piece, then we'll just have to move on.
Sure. Our next question is, are there managers that are very familiar with the choral world? I feel like I haven't heard of any or seen any at ACDA conferences or Chorus America conferences.
I would say that a lot of my fellow composer managers, we wanted to, myself included, if we wanted to work with composers, we work with composers from, at least from my own standpoint, we work with composers from all sorts of fields as much as we can. And so we do have composers with a large choral catalog who works primarily in the choral world, and then we also have composers who writes mostly for instrumental music. I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a manager that's only work for choral or only work for orchestras. If they are composer managers, they usually just work with the composer. If the composer happen to have a lot of choral music, and if they click, if they're after meeting and they like working with each other, and they think that they can do something with the catalog, I think they would try to work with each other.
Great. Thanks. And our next question is, how does paying for management work? Does the composer pay the manager upfront directly, or is it a certain percentage of commissions and royalties? And any actual percentages or dollar amounts would be helpful if that's something that you can provide.
We'll just make a note that we're not going to talk about specific percentages or dollar amounts. That's very specific to each manager and how they operate that. But Trudy, if you might want to take a section of that about how does one go about paying for management.
It depends on the manager and what kind of, I'm just going to touch on this broadly, just to give the type of financial arrangements that may happen. There could be a monthly retainer. There could be a flat project fee. Let's say if this is a short-term project that you and this potential manager has determined that it might take 3 months of work, and this is the flat fee they're going to charge. So that can be one of the other ways. There could be hourly charges. or that can be a combination of a retainer and a commission, depending on how big the commission, I mean, how much work the manager has to do. So, or there might just be plain taking commission. It all depends on what the specific manager is working off on. And there's no one type of financial arrangements. And so it is always good to ask the manager, the potential manager that you may want to work with, and what kind of financial arrangements that they work for, and be very clear about and ask all the questions that you need to ask and understand how the system works before you commit.
Great. Our next question is, I am a composer, performer who primarily performs her own work with a band, which is a mix of jazz and classical and not clearly in either genre. My catalog has few pieces that are not for my group. My impression is that composer managers typically work with artists who work primarily in a specific genre. How do I know what type of manager is the best fit for me based on the type of music I write?
Again, I would really encourage that. That is when the sometimes you read the website and it's not immediately clear if this manager, this potential person, is going to be helpful with you for what you do. But seek out the person, ask the question. If the manager thinks upfront that they won't be able to work with you because of the kind of music you write, they will tell you immediately. But if the manager thinks that, oh, there might be other angles, and you also don't know, sometimes you have to talk to the person before you can find out. And I think that composer management is still a developing, is a bit more of a developing area. So there are hopefully more managers who can be well versed with a lot of different musical genres that can help with different kind of composers.
Great. Our next question, do you show works to artistic administrators or performers abroad too?
Yes.
Great. And then our next question is, for contracts, do you work directly with our existing attorneys or do you use your own?
So we have a company attorney that's listed for me, and I know also some of my fellow management companies, they also have their own attorneys, but there are times like if we're navigating simple contracts, like for myself as an example, I have been working with contracts for composers for many years, so I also have some sort of knowledge to a certain extent that most simple contracts, it can be easily navigated, it can be easily negotiated. But I would say that if it involves some complicated technicalities, or there are multiple parties, or it involves clearance of higher level rights, is always good to think of hiring an attorney, just to be safe.
Great. Our next question, do you help facilitate commissions with orchestras?
Yes, I do.
All right. And then, where can we find either lists of managers or a website with managers for composers?
Unfortunately, I don't think this exists yet. It's a lot of a word of mouth thing, and I know that we managers don't have a place that we usually, well, that let's put it this way. Actually, there are paid services that you can find, like Musical America. They do have directories, and some other professional organizations. Let's say if you are a member of Chamber Music America, you get the directory. They sometimes have a section saying management, but that is a lot more performance artist managers, because they lump the performance artist managers with composer managers. So you might just have to look at the list and visit the website and see if they say they offer composers as one of the kinds of artists that they manage. But if you're thinking about just a place where composer management is listed, I don't think that exists just yet.
What other questions do we have for Trudy? Once again, if questions pop up after this, feel free to email Haley and I. You could also, like I said, just email us. We would set up another time to speak with Trudy to gain some further insights based on general questions that we receive. So we'll give it another minute or so. There we go. Do we have one more? Here.
Oh, let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another question that came in. Over the first few weeks, my assistant and I worked on different things, and eventually I had to choose which jobs fit into the hours I could afford and decided on the tasks that would ultimately bring in the most income. Can you talk about the idea of being patient for a, quote, return on the investment in a manager?
It really depends on what you want and what is the scope of the project. And there are times that however much of time that you invested in a project, however work you have done, it may not yield the result. And there are a lot of governing factors to that. And I would say that that there have been effort that has been paid and that this work that has been done, people have to look at the piece, but it may or may not get to the result that you want. And I think the first thing is not to immediately think that it's my project no good. Is a lot. It's beyond that. There are so many factors that is not necessarily has anything to do with the music. So in, so in a sense, if you work with a manager or you work with an assistant and then you take a lot of time and invest it financially for a certain amount, and then the result is not necessarily what you hope for, sometimes that does happen. And there are times that you spend the time, you pay the money, and you got the result. Great, but just be mindful that that sometimes will happen and is not necessarily anyone's fault or anything gone wrong or was anything that is bad or anything. It's just the stars are not lining up.
We did receive a question, can we get a recording of this session? So yes, a transcript of this and the recording will be posted on the ACF website. I'm gonna follow up with everybody that registered, and then we'll probably send a mass email to all members, knowing when the video is posted and also the transcript. This question?
Yeah. So our next question is there a composer whose promotional materials you thought were great and made you say yes to repping them? If so, can you speak to things like you like to see in composer promotional materials?
Okay, so one of my pet peeves, composer's website, we always, when we go visit a potential artist website, check out the website. Is the information easy to find? Is it clearly listed? Is it just a list of work, but you cannot click on anything? I would say in general, if I see composer's website present a list of work with nothing I can click on, I cannot find the information. I cannot learn about this. If I wanted to work with this person, if I want to send this website to a potential programmer, a programmer has, let's say, 3 minutes to determine whether they would want to look at this composer's music further, and then there's nothing to click, lose interest. So we wanted to make sure that first off, the website's up to date, it's good, and it's clear, and it has helpful information. Another thing which prompts us to pay more attention is how orderly the materials are. Scores, are they updated? Have they been cleaned up? I mean, we don't expect pristine scores that are in commercial publishing condition, because we understand. But sometimes I look at scores and see that there are a lot of things, that there are a lot of collisions, or there are a lot of things that is not quite done right, and we'll just want to think about more, okay, how much time would we need to spend with this particular artist just to bring those things up to a certain industry standard before we can actually get the work done. Because a lot of times, if the materials are not as up to par, it may give a falsely negative idea of what the music is. There are people who don't have time to look at things thoroughly. They just look at the surface and see the score is not clean, it's like next. So this is not saying that that particular presenters who look at things quickly like that is necessarily correct or anything, but sometimes people just don't have time, and then they need to make a quick decision. And if the score is not clear, it doesn't help them make the decision. And we wanted to also make sure that we work with artists that we can eventually make something happen for them. So yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Managers do take some work off your plate, but working with anyone also means you have to prepare on your side to get started on each. How would you like your composer to prepare their business to make a successful transition to working with a manager?
I would say that, again, present your materials, have them orderly, you know that what kind of projects you're looking at, and have information about each of the projects that you're looking at, or some clear sets of goals, and have some task lists. We all like to work with people with a lot, with the materials organized and that the thoughts are organized, and also present that they know what they want. If let's say if I meet an artist and I talk to this artist, so what are you looking at? What are you trying to, what do you think you want to see happen in the next 3-5 years? I don't know. I don't know. Isn't this something that maybe it happens? Maybe, I don't know. And that it will help me decide that maybe I don't want to work with this person, because I'm not sure if this person knows what what things are happening and when things want to happen. And I also see that maybe this person thinks that the manager can all of a sudden make everything happen. And again, I said that before, we're not magicians, and that might make our work difficult, and it might deter us from getting interested in working with this person.
Yeah. Do you work with DCINY and Mid-America, etc., to bring composers or their works to Carnegie Hall?
We don't work directly with set organizations per se, but we have contacts that we have worked with them on, and sometimes when we go to conferences, we see them, we say hi, we will say, hey, these are the composers that we're looking at, and take a look. But we don't necessarily work directly with them, actively try to make those kind of projects happen. But that said, that doesn't mean that we don't do it if a good opportunity arises, and then we can see that there's opportunity for us to collaborate.
Do you work with publishers to help promote their catalog, or do you find composers through your relationships with publishers?
Because I come from a publishing background, we sometimes do work with artists, or we work with specific catalogs from publishers. But this also depends on whether the publisher feels that they need help. And there are times that publishers will come to us, hey, I've seen this artist has sent us materials, but we don't have room to take this person. Would you like to take a look at these materials? And this also happened with a lot of my other contacts that in the music biz, and we regularly receive recommendations from our industry colleagues.
Any other questions? Okay, just as a reminder, we will, like I said, we are recording this, so we will download this video, make some edits to put some beginning and end credits, and we'll also have a transcript available. Thank you so much for participating and for all your suggestions that you also provided in our first email that we sent out. We will send an email tomorrow to follow up with you just to give us any feedback. This is the first time we're offering this type of service. We do plan to offer more after the new year, so any and all feedback is very welcome. We'd like to take this time to really thank Trudy for her time and all the energy and effort that she's spent over the past few months for doing this. We can't express our thanks enough. So thank you for your time, Trudy.
Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for giving me time to share some of my experience with all of you. I hope you find this helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Trudy.
Everyone, have a great evening, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.